There's a lot of big name running backs set to hit the free agent market. Who should teams target? Who should they stay away from? We're breaking down the class today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who make us your first listen every single day, we appreciate you being here very, very much. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
Joe, I think this is a really good running back class for the teams. I don't know that necessarily makes it a good running back class for the running backs.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because that's what, as I'm sitting here looking at my personal hierarchy of how I stack these players up and potentially have some level of appetite for addressing the position for my favorite team. I've kind of looked at them through both the macro and then also the more narrow scope of an individual team. There's a lot of names that have a lot of intrigue, and there's names that are featured players, and there are names that have been getting big money to this stage, even if it's not long-term commitment, big money.
I am going to do my best for you and for the listeners today to not be a total curmudgeon and just talk about how dumb it is to pay running backs and how there's never really works out. But can we start this by like just a very quick look back at last year? And you saw just a lot of mistakes with what was done here with the free agent running back market, whether it was Miles Sanders and signing 4 years, $25 million in Carolina. David Montgomery, very good. We like that a lot. Jamal Williams, Samaje Perine, Dalvin Cook, Alexander Madison. Those were your top AAVs handed out last year. You've got one good story to tell there. Now, I know that there was, a guy like Raheem Mostert scored 57 touchdowns, I'm pretty sure, this past year for the Miami Dolphins. That was a good player to bring back. Devin Singletary, great value deal for the Texans. But the top guys, when you look at the 5 biggest contracts handed out, 4 of them were complete flops. And so teams got to be careful this year to make sure that they spend this money wisely if they choose to invest it in some of these big name running backs.
Well, and not to kind of do another show in its entirety, but I don't know if you remember me doing this in the summertime.
Yes, I do.
I went back and did the running back research, and it was all running back contracts since 2014. So like the last 10 years of free agency cycles. Running backs to sign a new deal with a new team with salaries that exceeded, what was it, 3%?
Yeah, 3%. I thought it was
3% of the salary cap. And the overwhelming majority of this data is your numbers are down.
Yeah.
Right? You go to a new environment, and it's like offensive line in one unique way where like the good ones get paid for the team that they're with. But the difference with the offensive line is very rarely do good offensive linemen hit the free agency market where you're seeing annually talented players at this position that teams are saying, you know what, we're going to elect to go in a different way with where we're spending our money.
All right, so we got some names, man. We got some big time names here. If you're looking, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah. Who do you think can still go the most? Who's your top player? Did you guys top franchise tag?
Yeah, I feel real strong about who the top guy is.
I'd love to know who that is.
It's Saquon Barkley.
Okay.
I mean, how much can we really glean from this past season with Saquon Barkley with a disaster offensive line, disaster quarterback situations? I mean, there were games where they couldn't even literally complete a forward pass, and they're just feeding the ball to Saquon Barkley. There's no great opportunity for him to be productive. We know what he can do. Like, he was that catalyst last year for that offense. And so get this man out of the Giants. But if you're going to go in and pay one of these guys, I'm not. if some team is going to do it, I do it with Saquon Barkley.
What would you say if I told you that Saquon Barkley's yards before contact per attempt last year was tied for the second highest of his career?
I hear you on that, but it doesn't amount to much for me. I think so much about Jonathan Taylor and the comment that he made to us at the NFL Combine when he talked about vision, and he's like, yeah, anybody can see it, but he's like, how do you have that time on task with your blockers to understand how they're going to execute, how they're going to leverage blocks and work off of them? There's no way Saquon could have been in a good position to be able to do that this past year.
That's fair. I think the top player is Derrick Henry. I still think even at this stage in Derrick Henry's career, dude went out and hit 21.5 miles per hour in week 18.
He's my number 2.
You want to talk about playing behind bad offensive lines. The Giants were worse than Tennessee, but it wasn't that big of a void between the two, right?
Yeah.
And I just think Henry has a little bit more sustainability with his body of work. Now, obviously the argument for Saquon Barkley is he's 20, just like 3 days ago, turned 27.
Yeah.
Right. So you feel pretty good about like a 3-year window here before that mythical age of 30.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel like that's a full term on a big running back contract in today's world. Whereas Derrick Henry is probably a 1-year deal player.
Yeah.
You probably don't want to, maybe you do a 2-year deal, but you tie all the guarantees to the first year so you can cut ties if you need to, because there's a little bit more unknown as far as the aging of Derrick Henry. But I don't know. I think the body of work speaks for itself with Derrick Henry. And I think he showed last year that he's still very much involved. And I know they got Tajay Spears involved in the running game as kind of a nice change of pace back to him. And I think he'd certainly benefit from not being a 400 carry a year player anymore. But I probably feel that way about all these guys other than maybe Josh Jacobs, unless he gets all the way back from where he was in 2022.
Yeah, I think that all the way. I like Derrick Henry. I think for certain teams, like, you could see him coming in and being an X factor and really mattering. Like, he can't go to some crap team that's going to pay him a bunch of money and be the lead back. Like, that's not what I'm seeing for Derrick Henry. But I can think of a million teams. So it's Baltimore. God, Lord, that would be crazy. Miami, don't want that, right? Like, there's certain teams that I think Minnesota, right? Like, that would be if they bring back Kirk and want to get that veteran running back. There's some teams that I love this idea for. I think you mentioned getting all the way back, and I think Tony Pollard and Josh Jacobs fit into that bucket where we saw what they were in 2022. Jacobs 26, and that was the big appeal with him coming out of Alabama was like
low mileage.
Yeah, like none. He had a ton of opportunity in terms of not being an overly used player at Alabama, and then Tony Pollard was unbelievable in 2022. And I still think he had a good season, but you were very excited about getting
salary.
Get Zeke out of the way and Boogie, right? It didn't fully happen. And maybe I think some of their offensive line, like I didn't like Biadasz this year. Steele, I think, was kind of down at right tackle. But those guys can play if they do get back. I think they could be very good starters.
Yeah. So I think that's the names for the definitive names for me are in some order: Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard. And that's the order that I have them in. If you want to talk about like who could be a quality starter in the right environment, I think those are the guys.
Okay. I think quality starter being the operative word there. I got to go to bat for somebody here, Kyle Crabbs.
Devin Singletary.
You know it. I'm going to bat for Devin Motor Singletary coming up here on the other side of it, so be sure to stick with us. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. So you can bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. They've also got some football's futures bets out there. Whatever sport you want to watch, it's available for you on FanDuel, and it just makes the games that much more exciting. So check it out. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA.
Go ahead. Get it all off your chest. I think Devin Singletary is an adequate starter. I think he's a very quality,
and that's all I'm talking about. Yeah, quality. That's
low cost, productive player. I'm with you.
Was there a better free agent contract handed out to a running back than Devin Singletary this past year? 1 year, $2.75 million. That like it switched teams. I know Mostert's he deserves all the flowers for staying, but like a guy that switched teams and was the lead running back in Buffalo for 4 years in a row. He's been over 1,000 yards from scrimmage each of the last 3 seasons. He's been the starting running back for good offenses. He goes to Houston. It's all about Dameon Pierce. We love Dameon Pierce. He runs hard. His helmet falls off and he continues to run. Devin Singletary took it from him. And like at some point, we just got to acknowledge that Devin Singletary is a dependable, reasonable starting NFL running back. And I there's got to be more out there for him this year than 1 year 2.75.
Are you agree with everything you're saying? Right. I think the nice thing about Devin Singletary has never been a long speed, explosive, open field player.
You're not getting that.
That should age gracefully for Devin Singletary, who's missed 1 game in the last 3 years. Right.
And he didn't even remember the Bills didn't play 17 games in 2022.
Right. Yeah. Excuse me. So he has not missed a game in the last 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
He fell 16 in 2022. So I'm glad we have a Bills guy on the podcast.
Yeah.
Is ball security a worthwhile footnote for Devin Singletary? Because I feel like that's aside of like dynamic open field ability or like long speed explosiveness, like that's kind of the thing that jumps to me for him. And I know he only had 1 fumble this past year, so it was a good year for him in that regard. But he had 13 fumbles in the previous 4 seasons in his rookie contract in Buffalo.
I don't know. To me, fumbles at a normal rate. You wish he fumbled less, right? That's for sure. But I think like the short area quickness, the shiftiness, like is he like 5'7"? What is he?
5'7",
he's
204.
Right. Like his ability to just like hide behind blockers and stuff. He's a tough little guy to deal with. Yeah, there's things that you wish were different about Devin Singletary. And that's why I think it was appropriate for us to not include him in the quality starters. But man, you could do so much worse than him. So I don't want to spend like 3 hours on him, but
no, we don't need to. And I knew you were going to come to bat for him. So I kind of did the extra like prep work on like, okay, let me really digest Devin Singletary's resume and 14 fumbles on 1,063 career touches. You just foil that against like Derrick Henry has 2,200 touches and 17 fumbles in his career. And Saquon Barkley has 6 fumbles in his career in 6 seasons. So that's just
it. He only had 1 last year. Fixed the problem.
He only had 1 in 2020 as well, and then had 5 and 3 in the next 2 seasons. So,
yeah, go ahead and overlook Devin Singletary some more.
How about DeAndre Swift?
What are you doing with DeAndre Swift, man? What are you doing with this guy?
I think Philadelphia provided him the opportunity to see, hey, here's the talent. Is there still some instinctual stuff that maybe you wish was better as far as like vision at times? Yes. But Philly also did not do this dude any favors down the stretch. This offense is falling apart at the seams. They're getting halftime. The guy's got 2 touches, and he's the leading rusher out of the backfield. Puts up 1,000 yards this season. Really productive. He's 1,200 yards, 6 touchdowns. And he's never had less than 7 touchdowns in a season. So 4th-year player, only 1 career season thus far in his NFL career with more than 215 touches. So he's not a high mileage guy. I think he kind of showed you some of his explosives. How many touchdowns did he get vultured by Jalen Hurts when he got tackled at the 1-yard line?
15.
I think he legit lost 7 touchdowns where he was tackled inside the 2-yard line.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I know that Jalen had 15 rushing touchdowns, so I figured they were all tush pushes. So I think this could have been a lot more impressive of a statistical year for DeAndre Swift than what it was. So if there was a guy that I kind of wanted to give a middle ground market contract to, I think Devin Singletary is a buy low option because he was a buy low option last year. He was on a 1-year deal. I think he'll probably get something similar. I could see Swift getting 3 for 15. Yep. That's what I have down.
Yep. So I think that's if you wanted a little bit more of a long-term commitment with a player that still has youth on his side. He just turned 25 last month. After the 4 years of his rookie contract, he put up a best season. That's the guy for me is a middle ground 1B option for you.
I'd love to get your takes on Austin Ekeler here. Obviously,
you don't want my take.
Well, no, we do. I think that's why we want him. I know that you had some things to say about Austin Ekeler, and tough year for the Chargers. Obviously, dude, they're picking 5th in the draft.
Right.
They had some O-line injuries, obviously. But I thought Ekeler certainly had his own warts this past season. Is he cooked?
I think so. The yards per touch was down almost a yard. If you did a graph of the yards per touch for Austin Ekeler across the course of his career, mind you, he's turning 29 in May, I believe. Austin's gained this legendary status for the fantasy production and 38 touchdowns in 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Yards per touch perspective, 7.3, 6.6, 6.9, 5.5, 5.6, 5.3, 4.6. What? That's not up and to the right? That's not the trend that you want to see for a 29-year-old running back who looked like, and I know he had an ankle sprain, but injury's always kind of been a thing for Austin Ekeler.
Mm-hmm.
He's played through it a lot of the time. But I know he got the ankle sprain in week 1 against Miami when he put up awesome numbers in that game. He looked like he was running a 4.8 by midseason. So you've got 276 and 311 touches in your year 27 and year 28, or your year 26 and 27 seasons. 28, you experience a massive dip, drop in productivity, drop in explosiveness. I just don't see the uptick to come back up to justify. He'd be, for me, a name with concerns more than even a vet depth option.
Do you feel like Austin Ekeler's next opportunity needs to be not coming for 250, 300 touches? This is probably a 150 touch player, right? Like, get the pass catching ability out of him in a non-featured role. I think that's where you can potentially maximize what's left in the tank there.
You want to maximize him, you give him the 2021 Tony Pollard role in Dallas.
Well, that's what we got excited about with Kellen Moore and the Chargers, right? But Josh Kelly wasn't Zeke.
Right.
Don't know what to tell you.
So
he wasn't Zeke.
You end up dipping into the pool for every back on your roster and practice squad to try and find somebody with some life in the running game. But yeah, I think 150 to 175 touches across a full season, you're talking 8 to 10 touches a game. Get really involved in the passing game. Obviously, Eckler's been a guy who's caught a ton of balls. He had, 109, 107 receptions?
2 years ago, yeah.
2 years ago. So that that element is there. Can you age gracefully into what Gio Bernard was down the stretch as a really valuable third down type player? I know Gio was really good in pass pro. Those are the kinds of questions I'm asking with Austin Ekeler.
14 fumble guy Kyle Crabbs, 14 fumbles over the last 3 seasons. So we gotta make sure we knock him for that.
It's not great.
Not great. What else here? We're talking 1B's veteran depth. Zack Moss,
AJ Dillon.
Oh, I'm just not in on AJ Dillon. But go ahead. I mean,
I'm in on AJ Dillon every other month.
Because
every other month the switch flips. It's like, man, he's running ticked off. Like, he looks good.
Yeah, he's got big quads, Kyle Crabbs, big thighs, man.
And the next month after that, you're like, man, can you just like get up into the hole and get some tough yards? You're going down way too easy for a 230-pound back. So I think there's just variance there with AJ Dillon, and maybe he's a hot hand kind of guy. And if that's the case, then that's a rotational vet depth, but that's probably a Donta Foreman type contract. Which was 1 for 3?
Oh, Deonta Foreman signed 1 for 2.
1 for 2.
Yep.
Okay. So that's the stratosphere. Your peak's probably Gus Edwards, because Gus Edwards got just under 3.5 from Baltimore.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly right.
3.38. So
running back in the NFL, like, we all love the dazzling highlights, but sometimes it's C3 get 3 or C3 get 3.5, right? Like, some of that's got to happen. And AJ Dillon has to be able to embrace that for the style of player that he is. To me, he's in this bucket of, like, I have AJ Dillon in a bucket with Gus Edwards, Zeke Elliott, Deontay Foreman. Like those are his peers to me in this running back class.
I have a tier that includes Clyde Edwards-Helaire, AJ Dillon, Donta Foreman, and Gus Edwards. Is that
Gus Edwards had a lot of touchdown production this year, right? Like, but Baltimore's got to be looking to get a little bit more dynamic there. And I know that J.K. Dobbins has been injured every single second of his life for the last few years, but
chill.
Feel like, the guy's out there getting injured, demanding contract, like one of the most ridiculous things.
He just held out the whole season looking for his new deal,
Dude, I can't. I can't.
I like Gus Edwards. I will admit, when I put Gus Edwards under the microscope, I was a little surprised with just how I thought he was more loose than he is as a runner, right? That's exactly right. And for those of you not watching on YouTube, shame on you, but just pointing in a straight line. You get him pointed the way you want him to go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he's going to power through and make sure he picks up a couple yards at a minimum. And I think there's some, if you didn't have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson as the counterpunch off of that and still the run game, I'd be a little bit more leery of what Gus Edwards looks like. Does he look like the Gus Edwards who posts 990 yards on 210 touches and 13 touchdowns this year? Or does he look more like late stage Latavius Murray?
Ooh.
Well, it's body type standpoint. It's kind of how he's built, right?
Yeah. He could be the veteran in the room, but boy, oh boy, you don't want him to play. You don't want him to play. All right, we are going to get to some names to be concerned with, and I'd also like to ask Kyle Crabbs for his sleeper back. Give him a little second to marinate on that, so stick with us. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers.
So our late stage guys are going to be the Cordero Pattersons of the world, the, I guess, Latavius Murrays of the world, the Dalvin Cooks of the world. These the players we're invoking here with players of concern.
Yeah, I think that's a healthy list. I mean, even like Rashaad Penny, can you really count on that?
I can't quit him.
I'm
not going to pick him as my sleeper, but I can't quit him.
Yeah, J.K. Dobbins. I mean, he's like the youngest and potentially most dynamic, but what can you possibly anticipate there?
Right.
I think a buyer beware name is Antonio Gibson with the Commanders. He's kind of been a little flashy, but you want to talk ball security problems, whether it's fumbling, whether it's dropping passes. The variance there just makes me really nervous. And so he'd be a stay away guy for me, although big, athletic, pass catching upside, but I don't know what he's put on tape. It doesn't really impress me.
Can I go Rico Dowdle as a sleeper?
I think that's a good take.
I'm trying to find an authentic sleeper and not come back with Kareem Hunt, who hasn't really played, right?
Yeah.
Although I guess we're far enough away from Kareem Hunt being Kareem Hunt that it probably would qualify as a sleeper, but everybody knows who he is. I think Rico Dowdle is maybe the back that with more opportunity, and Dallas maybe not feeling obligated to feed their franchise tag running back to justify paying him the franchise tag. But he's at 96 career rushes. I thought he did some nice things in the passing game for Dallas this past year. Showcased some good pop as far as just being a runner. He's got decent size. He's not a big back, but he's not like a diminutive player.
Runs physical.
Runs hard, yeah. I think that's probably the one for me if I'm like, okay, who's somebody I could see getting a low-dollar contract and far outperforming that this upcoming season. I think Rico Dowdle's on that list for me.
Yeah, I think if you're Rico Dowdle for less is so much more appealing to me than a lot of other players that are potentially going to be for more.
How about DJ Dallas?
Yeah, DJ Dallas is he's been a good teams player, right? He's never had a ton of consistent opportunity on offense, but you're talking about your third running back. That's what you need, right? You need that special teams upside, and I think DJ Dallas absolutely provides that to you. Even Travion Williams is a third running back that can do that piece of it as well.
I don't know what you're talking about for lack of consistency. DJ gets about 30 carries a year.
Yeah.
That's as consistent as he has. Yeah, I could see it. I like him coming out of Miami. So those are a couple backs that I think you can get pointed in the right direction for. And he is a bigger guy. He's 5'10", 215, 220. It's a thicker guy. So if you want some upside, I'd go that route. That's a player I wouldn't shy away from as long as he grasps your protection scheme because he's a teams guy. The physicality component's there. The frame's there. Every time he's had to kind of step in for backs in Seattle, kind of pops a little bit.
Yeah, it's easy to love those guys that just run like with that total pissed off, like I'm going to kill people. So then he does that. Does Zack Moss count as a sleeper? I mean, he had a big season, kind of. He had 986 yards from scrimmage and 7 touchdowns for the Colts. But like, what does that mean for a contract, right? Like you think about maybe some parallels to last offseason. Like, there wasn't a ton out there for a guy like Damian Harris, who did a whole lot more in his career with New England, injury parallels as well between the two guys. But, if you're looking for, some depth that produced this past year, and I think he needed to get away from Buffalo and going to the Colts wind up kind of unlocking some things for him, and you got that big opportunity with Taylor down. I think that'd be an appealing name for me in terms of, okay, we're going to call it sleepers.
Let me ask you this, and this is a player who's on the market, but he's a restricted free agent, so like his pathway coming back to his team is very easy. Would you be surprised at all if Patrick Taylor took all of AJ Dillon's reps next year and is just as impactful of a player?
I think he's more dynamic. I think he can do more. Yeah.
And he's also 6'3", 230 as well.
Yeah, he's big. Swiss Army knife type player. I feel like LaFleur can get some stuff going there. Yeah, I would. I'm not paying AJ Dillon.
So let Dillon walk. You save a couple $1 million and just have Patrick Taylor step in. I mean, they have I think he's also an expiring contract, but Emmanuel Wilson's another young, big back. They get some big dudes behind Aaron Jones in that backfield.
Yeah. Well, shout out for Ty Johnson. I thought he did a really nice job for the Bills. I mean, he played 7.8% of the snaps. He was on the practice squad until about midway through the season. But, as Latavius Murray, you could tell the wheels fell off. Like he had a good start to the season. They were able to bring in Ty Johnson, who's like 5'10", 215. He's got 4.4 speed. He can catch and run. 4-phase special teams guy. You're talking about a potential minimum contract guy. The Bills didn't sign him till like a week before camp last year. And I thought he did nothing but pop. And, again, not an expanded role type guy, but I'd love for him to be back in Buffalo, which means some other team should also be pretty interested in adding him as a depth player for their team.
If you wanted to go, if you wanted to go with a vet route for somebody who could be productive, particularly in the passing game, I still think Jerick McKinnon can go. I know he kind of had a quiet year this year versus last year.
He got run in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
He's out there playing.
Big surprise. Jerick McKinnon's making plays late in the postseason for Kansas City.
Right. He was like on IR.
Up every year in January. Dude. But he caught 50 balls in 2022 for Kansas City.
Yeah.
It came back on a 1-year deal for less than $1.5 million. So I understand he's 32, but he's a guy that is not a volume guy. I think even at his stage in his career, he'd be a valuable addition to a lot of running back rooms as a rotational guy.
17 snaps in the Super Bowl. Little X factor. You wonder about a guy like this. Does he represent the same value to another team? Or is
I'm sure
just kind of
there's some.
Yeah, he's just the little X.
He had 124 touches in the regular season in 2022. He played 46% of snaps.
I think it's a good call out. It's a good call out.
So that's it. That's all I got.
Don't sign Melvin Gordon. Don't sign Dalvin Cook. Don't sign Kareem Hunt. Don't sign Matt Breida.
All the names that you might get excited about because they scored points for your fantasy team 4 years ago, just let them go. Let it go.
Benjamin's not going to be a thing. Chase Edmonds can't play. Royce Freeman's going to get a chance somewhere, right? Just don't do this stuff, man. I have these, and this is my just don't category. And we just
Breida? You mentioned Breida yet?
No, I did. Yeah, I've never seen a guy make more mental mistakes at the running back position than Matt Breida. He's fast though.
Be curious if Boston Scott ends up landing in Indy with Steichen. He's considered their pet project for like 3 years. 29-year-old back, but another good like teams player who used to make some pretty good contributions in the passing game. So that's it. That's all we got for you here on Locked On NFL Scouting. Joe, we got to decide who we're watching, how we're going to attack the top of this for as far as deep dives for players, but we're going to really get into the weeds on some of the top names from this running back class tomorrow on the show. So you have that to look forward to. Come on back and see us. I'm Kyle Crabbs. He's Joe Marino. We are Locked On NFL Scouting. Make it a great rest of your day. We're out of here.